and monsters. They exist among us, and sometimes they win. Even the devil was an angel once. The world has its own rules, and these rules are not human. Some of us seek answers to the origin and existence of cryptids and the unexplained. Join us as we venture beyond the known and accepted boundaries. Welcome to our nightmare. I think you're going to like it. Hey folks, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Phantoms and Monsters Radio, where we explore the strange and the unexplained. I'm your host, Lon Strickler. Thanks for joining us. Now, if you enjoy our content, please subscribe, like, and share our presentations. Feel free to comment as well. Super chat donations are very much appreciated, and it's active during the show. So if you want to show your support, please click the dollar icon underneath the chat. You can also support the channel by using the Buy Me a Coffee link or banner. Your consideration is much appreciated. So Stan Gordon began his interest in UFO subject and other strange incidents at the age of 10 in 1959. He began in the field investigations of UFOs and other mysterious events in 1965, and the primary investigator of the December 1965 UFO crash recovery incident that occurred near Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. Now, Stan is a former Pennsylvania state director of MUFON and has been involved with the investigation of thousands of mysterious encounters throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Stan has also been featured in several films and documentaries. Stan's 4 books are a culmination of his extensive field research. His latest book is Creepy Cryptids and Strange UFO Encounters of Pennsylvania, Bigfoot, Thunderbirds, Mysteries of the Chestnut Ridge, and more. You can find Stan's website at www.stangordon.info. So, Stan, thanks for coming on this evening.
Stan, can you hear us? Go ahead, say hi to Lon.
Lon, can you hear me? It's Stan.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
That's fine. Yep, I got you.
But turn him up a little bit, Vincent. I can hardly hear him, but we've been having little issues tonight, so just bear with us. We'll get this all straightened out.
Not a problem. Your audio is a little tinny, though. I can hear you, but you're a little tinny.
Yeah.
Couldn't.
Okay, well, let's start off again. Stan, welcome tonight. I'm glad to have you again. What's been going on? I mean, you and I have been conversing back and forth. There seems to be a lot of stuff going on this summer, especially. What have you been seeing out there in Western PA?
Well, it's been busy actually all year. It's been unusually active all year long, right through the fall and winter of last year, right in through this year, and the last few weeks have been extremely active with some very unusual reports. We're hearing UFO activity. There's been daylight incidents. We've had Bigfoot encounters. We're hearing all kinds of things, but very interesting. And you and I have talked about this. Yes, for years and years, I've been investigating what I call mini UFOs, or some people might refer to them as orbs. I've been looking at them since the 1960s. These cases over the years, we're hearing more and more cases, but actually since March of this year and right through the last few days, we're just seeing this surge of these reports of these generally smaller objects. They range anywhere from the smallest ones about 1 to 2 inches in diameter, like oversized fireflies, to objects that are, again, generally spherical, but not always. They're about the size of a golf ball to a baseball, but a lot of them are about 1 foot or 2 in diameter.
Right.
In some cases, they appear to be solid metallic. In most cases, they're just bright light sources of various colors. But what's so intriguing about them over the years, I've had incidents where, one, most of these are close to the ground. I've had them actually follow vehicles. I've had them enter vehicles in people's homes through open windows, and then generally just fly back out the window, even though we've had some reports of going through the walls of homes. And again, very intriguing. What we're getting in recent months is a surge of activity, and not just in wooded areas, but even in more populated areas. People's security cameras are going off, and they're getting some of these on video. But these objects, even in daylight, in recent weeks, are coming very close to people, within feet of them in daylight. And some of these cases are startling, which I can give you a lot more detail on some of those cases as well.
But sure, yeah, that's what we want to hear. I will tell you, you're right. It has been pretty active. We've been getting a lot of these cryptid canine reports this year, especially. In fact, we're actively looking at 4 cases right now. And this Friday, we're going to have somebody on from the Berks County case, Matt Hyrak. And yeah, it is. It's been crazy. And I haven't been really getting a lot of UFO reports, but I normally don't. The UFO reports don't normally come to me. Now, of course, when Butch was around, he was getting a lot of that. But I haven't really been seeing much of that. You talk about the orbs. It's pretty crazy. Not necessarily in Pennsylvania, but a lot of the Bigfoot encounters that I've been getting from all over the country and all over North America. There's been a lot of orb activity involved with it. I'm talking about anywhere from grapefruit size to basketball size orbs. So there's definitely a connection there.
Yeah, well, Lon, you and I have talked many times about that massive wave here in 1973. And actually, it was 1972 when I started noticing some unusual phenomena going on in certain areas. And it was an area actually only miles away from where I live where things have been quiet. And the larger wooded area and different landowners independently began to contact me about all of a sudden seeing strange lights in the sky, weird screams and howls from the woods, unusual footprints, something heavy bipedal walking. People saw a broad-shouldered creature chasing dogs in the woods. Strange footprints were showing up, but they were also reporting these small, little, tiny spheres of light right around their homes and in the bushes. And then 1973 comes around, and that's when we had that massive wave that we've never had since then.
Right.
Of hundreds of UFO sightings all year in Pennsylvania. Then the summer of 73 is when we had the biggest Bigfoot outbreak ever documented. That went on to 1974. And that's when a lot of strange things came to my research group's attention. One of the first things was the fact that my teams would get to some of these locations within minutes to hours after the incident occurred. And even in various ground conditions, including snow, we'd have these very large, unusual footprints with big strides between them that would go for a distance and then just abruptly just end when there should have been more tracks.
Right.
And then we began to have that pattern where we'd have a UFO sighting, and then with minutes, hours, and days later, we'd have a Bigfoot sighting or vice versa. And then we had those very bizarre cases with UFOs and Bigfoot seen together at the same time and place. But the balls of light were interesting. We had some reports during that time. We had that one case north of Pittsburgh, September 73, when you had the 2 witnesses who were outside waiting for a friend to pick them up, when they see this about 7-8 foot tall, hair-covered Bigfoot with white hair running across the road towards the woods, but in one of its hands it's carrying a small luminous ball of light. And a short time later is when that strange object moved across the sky in that area and projected a beam of light down into the woods where the creature ran into. That was one of the first things that began to raise our attention to it. And then over the years, more cases came to my attention. And I talked about this years ago, and you and I talked about this, that we're getting reports in areas where there's a lot of history of Bigfoot activity, where witnesses or investigators were starting to report these small spheres of light low to the ground, some cases coming towards them. And in more recent years now, it's intensifying here in Pennsylvania, actually I should say in more recent months. And all over the country now, you're hearing these kind of reports. It's complicated phenomena. It is much stranger than any of us ever imagined. There's a lot more to this than just the Bigfoot connection. I've had the indication that found a lot of correlation with other cryptids and some of the strange things that are going on. It's a very complex phenomenon, whatever we're dealing with.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely connections between all the paranormal aspects. You know, and in particular, this past year, I've been hearing all kinds of crazy things. Like you said, the balls of light have really become prominent this year with all types of activity. Now, you are, I know Eric Altman had been involved with that investigation on the Chestnut Ridge starting earlier this year. And all the light phenomena that he was experiencing, him and his team, I think you were involved with some of that as well. That kind of seemed to start things off. And then all of a sudden we started getting reports, a lot of reports of the canines.
Yeah, and actually, I'm trying to look at my file here. There's just pages and pages of reports in here. It's unbelievable.
Let me ask you something real quick. Bernadette just brought this up, and she's the one that reported to me about the booming sounds in Somerset County. I reported to you. Then apparently some other people had heard it. You have any idea what was going on?
No, actually, I did not receive any of the reports. I received the information you sent me. You know, and over the last year or so, we continue to hear some alleged reports of what we call mystery booms. And in a few of these cases, we were able to pretty much figure out what they were, but there's some we did not. Yeah. And I believe, and I have hundreds of reports in this file from the last year or so. And I believe it was December 31st of last year when we had that very interesting mystery boom that extended all along the Chestnut Ridge from Westmoreland County side up to Indiana County. And so that's right along the ridge where, of course, there's been a history of all kind of phenomena for years. Yearly Bigfoot sightings, including one this year in the afternoon on Mother's Day. But that one we've never been able to find a source for it. I mean, that was well over 20-mile radius.
Well, and, I mean, weren't they saying they thought it was a meteorite that exploded?
Well, there was two different ones.
Right.
One, and again, I have to look at the dates, but there was one. The date one apparently was connected to a bright fireball meteor, but the other incident involved that incident that happened up along the Chestnut Ridge. That one we've never been able to come up with a solution for.
Okay. Well, whatever you want to talk about, you got anything new, let us know, Stan.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to get you into some of these more recent and some of this activity. I mean, again, there's been Bigfoot sightings. There's been cryptid reports. Mm-hmm. Lots of low-level UFO sightings. A lot of reports in daylight over the past several months of large, solid, cigar-shaped objects, even in beautiful, clear skies, that don't accelerate and take off. These things just suddenly vanish and disappear.
Right.
And we've had some intriguing cases of large triangular objects being reported. One was about 2 weeks ago, and I'll try to find that report for you. But there's some much more interesting things here. I'm just trying to find some of the pages here, trying to get up through the last few weeks, and we should be here in a minute. Here's an interesting case. This was a huge triangular object mid-July this year. Now, for years, we've had reports of light activity down the Mon Valley area outside of Pittsburgh. So This is the areas down along the Monongahela River, where there have been, for years and years, I've been down there since the 70s investigating Bigfoot and UFOs and all kinds of strange things, and objects seen around the river and over the river, going in and out of the river in different areas, not just there, but across Pennsylvania for years of objects going out of the lakes and rivers of Pennsylvania. But on this particular case, there were two people riding across the bridge down near Elizabeth, and they observed this huge black triangular object hovering above the river about 150 to 200 feet over the river. It was hovering but pivoting in position. And this thing was so big that two of the tips of the object extended and covered both sides of the river. So this thing's at least probably around 300 feet in length. And that was interesting. But as I'm going up here a little further, things are going to get even more interesting. Again, a lot of the reports, again, of different objects being reported, but it's just these reports of these small spherical. Here's a report from, and there's several of these reports from one of my research associates, Jim Brown. So this is from Greene County in August of this year.
Okay.
Around 10:30, two witnesses observe a bright sphere about 20 feet away, about 10 inches diameter, kind of yellowish white. They see this thing that move from window to window, and it's still there. So here's what's interesting. They try to get a picture of it with their phone camera, and they could see the surroundings through the viewfinder, through the imager, but they couldn't see the object itself. So actually, they were able to get a digital camera, just an older type digital camera, and they still could only see the surroundings, not the orb. Then they found there was an old SLR film camera with, of course, it's a different type of optical viewfinder, and when they looked through it, they could actually see the orb through it, but of course it didn't operate. But that orb began to move slowly away, then stopped a couple seconds, then moved quickly higher and vanished over the field. That was a kind of interesting report. But these cases are getting much more interesting as I'm going down trying to go into my files.
My investigator on our team, James West, he was talking to me about these donut-shaped UFOs that he's seen. He lives in Greene County. I think he lives near Nemacolin, in that area around there. And, that's something that Butch and I looked into a lot. We used to get a lot of those here in Susquehanna Valley, these donut-shaped, undulating type UFOs that seem to morph and stuff. I used to call them, some type of bioform. They'd come in all types of colors and all, but they always had that donut hole in them. Really weird stuff. And then, of course, James had that sighting recently near his place. So, that was down in Greene County.
Yeah, there's been reports from all over the greater Pittsburgh area. Again, daylight was a night of various types of objects being seen. And now here's some really interesting, very recent, these small spheres of light reports. So this was from Jim Brown. This was early October this year outside of Uniontown, Fayette County. So I'm sure we'll talk a lot about Fayette County. It's one of the most active areas in the country. A lot of these areas along the Chestnut Ridge. So what I know about this right now, and at some point I'll get Jim's report up on a website. So this man's awakened around 6 o'clock in the morning, decides he wants to go out and read the newspaper. So he puts on his robe and slippers, and he starts walking outside. He sees this glowing white ball at eye level, about 10 to 12 inches in diameter, between him and the paper box. As he's watching this thing, it's making like small circular motions, and all of a sudden he's getting very, very sleepy right as he's watching this thing. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, his wife's looking for him, and she finds him outside in the chair on the porch in his pajamas in 40-degree weather. Tried to wake him up. It was very hard to wake him up, and he was groggy, but he could tell her about seeing this sphere. So that part about being very tired is very significant because listen to this report. So this is now a few days later up in the Laurel Highlands where we have a lot of reports. So between the Chestnut Ridge and the Laurel Ridge is a significant active area for years of all kind of strange ongoing phenomena. Anyhow, so here's this report. I interviewed the witness again yesterday. So about 2:30 in the morning, this person's awakened. She goes into the restroom, comes out of the restroom, and looking about 5 feet away, I believe, in the living room, she sees this 1.5 foot diameter gray-blue sphere about 5 feet away from her. Now, it's one of those older homes, so it's a very tall, very high ceiling, and this thing's about 7 feet above the head of the witness, but it's about 5 feet away. It's perfectly round inside the house again. The deep blue color. Inside of that sphere looks like a swirling mass of the gray color. She said it looked like one of those old lava lamps, the way it was moving around. There was no sound from it. She remembers taking one step towards it, and then, this is interesting, she felt a tingling sensation. She said it was like a pre-jolt of electricity, like you get when you touch an electric fence, which I recall having done that over my investigations over the years. And she said she looked at it, and after about 10 seconds, she became very sleepy. And she said it was so weird. Like, why didn't she keep watching it? And for whatever reason, she went right in the bed to lay down and quickly went to sleep. And she said, that is not normal for me. She said, I'm an insomniac. It takes me hours to fall asleep. When she awakened the next morning, she was very groggy and sluggish the whole next afternoon. So here's two interesting cases with various similar physiological effects reported by the people with these small spheres. And again, some really interesting Bigfoot reports are coming in. I'm looking into them. One was a very interesting one happened the day after that happened, but outside in the Pittsburgh area. And I'm still trying to obtain some more detail. It was a very close range, very detailed Bigfoot encounter with two witnesses. And it's just on and on and on. The reports coming in as recent as last night. And just a lot of mysterious things happening.
Wow. Well, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, we've had some pretty lax years, especially during COVID, though we did still get reports. But all of a sudden, it seems like this year, it's just the way things feel. I mean, we're getting stuff around here as well. So, I'm not really surprised. I really am not.
Yeah. Let me give you another really interesting daylight encounter with one of these spheres from April 6th. Again, Jim Brown report from Fayette County. So this is a very nice day. It's some cloud cover, dry, no rain in the forecast, wind mostly calm. And it's around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Husband and wife are out in their yard doing some yard work, doing some digging. When they notice about 50 feet away, they see this round silver object about 2 feet in diameter, slowly moving, drifting in their direction about 10 feet above the fence line. Their first thought was it was a Mylar balloon, but as it's getting closer to them, they realize this is not a balloon, and this object is getting brighter and brighter in illumination. As it gets very close to them, all of a sudden, it like explodes, but there was no sound. Oh, well, excuse me. It was like a small lightning bolt that shot from the object to the ground. The explosive sound was like a stab of small firecracker, like a snap, like a spark. The spark started a small fire on the field. The man immediately put it out with a shovel. They noticed about 100 feet away along the path that came, there was another small fire they put out as well. So Jim Brown, who's a very high-tech guy with a lot of equipment, he got on the scene there, I believe, within 45 minutes, and he checked over the whole area, and he was just surprised that, one, there's no residue whatsoever. Had it been a Mylar balloon or a firecracker, there should have been a lot of debris. There was absolutely nothing there. That's just the kind of things that are going on.
Dude, I mentioned earlier about Eric and what was going on up on the ridge. Have they resolved that at all?
Well, they have not come up with an explanation. And again, that's an area where one, Fayette County, that's the area I believe they're calling Area X right now, which is an undisclosed location. I think you and I have talked about this. I started noticing some of these particular areas back in the 70s. In more recent years, we're aware of certain locations where, for whatever it is, this phenomenon seems to target certain geographical locations, certain properties. Some of them have had a long history of paranormal experiences and people hearing screams and howls and seeing Bigfoot or cryptids or UFOs. And so that's fascinating. But I'm aware of one area up in the New York, PA border where there's been a lot of ongoing activity, which they apparently have some very good video of some of these small spheres of light below the ground. But they have a whole history of all kind of things up there with Bigfoot sightings and all kind of mysterious events going on up there as well. And there's other areas we know of here in Pennsylvania where there's a history as well. But this is kind of a newer, active area now. And again, I've been receiving reports from other people very close to that area about the spheres. These people have no idea about this other location. And it's not just one area where these reports are coming in. I'm getting widespread reports from different parts of the state, a lot of it here in southwest Pennsylvania and around the greater Pittsburgh area.
Mm-hmm.
And again, a lot of these are not just in wooded areas. We're hearing reports from people who live in housing developments, and they're having encounters as well reported around their property in more populated areas.
Interesting. We had a strange trail cam photo that came, I think I sent it to you, from up on Laurel Mountain, and I know Laurel Mountain is notorious for having some weird stuff. Have you heard anything up there lately?
I'm sorry, Ron, you cut out.
We had an unusual trail cam photo come from up on Laurel Mountain. And I know the area is notorious for a lot of strange activity. Have you heard anything up there lately? Lots of reports. I get reports all the time. So again, take a look at your map of Western PA. So you've got the Chestnut Ridge, and then just a short distance away, you've got the Laurel Ridge. Right.
So in the Chestnut Ridge area, that area basically encompasses Westmoreland, Fayette, and Indiana County in southwest PA. That extends down to a few miles outside of Morgantown, West Virginia, Preston County.
Right.
The Westmoreland and Fayette areas is very active. And then you go in the Laurel Ridge, so you're looking at like Westmoreland, Fayette, Somerset counties. And then we'll go into Cambria, which is very active right now too. So yeah, we've been getting a lot of reports. And again, that incident I just told you about where the small sphere was inside the home, that is in the Laurel Ridge area. And that was, again, just in recent weeks. Other people were calling me about other things going on up there as well. And I can tell you this past April in the afternoon, so we're talking outside of Ligonier now, so very close to those same areas, and I never put the description out, but we did receive independent confirmation that afternoon, a beautiful day, of a huge, solid, metallic object with multiple lights on it, hovering right on top of the trees, not far off of Route 30, which is one of the main highways going through there.
Right.
That's what's going on as well. I've had other UFO cases being reported from that same general area in recent weeks as well. Again, a lot of reports of these cigar-shaped objects being reported around the area, even in daylight, that, again, don't accelerate and go into the sky. They just physically vanish and disappear. And then also on, I believe it was May 14th, you can get on my website and see the picture. There was a very interesting photograph taken in the afternoon from Lake Trobe, looking towards the Chestnut Ridge, towards Ligonier, of this kind of, well, you take a look at the picture, it is a very well-defined object that we've never been able to come up with a good explanation for.
Yeah, you mentioned Cambria County. Yeah, we're looking into an area that had a cryptid canine, possible cryptid canine sighting earlier this year. I posted a report the other day, but notoriously up around Wilmore, around Evansburg, and then down into Portage, we've been having a lot of cryptid canine reports in that area.
Okay, so that's interesting because I've been getting multiple reports for the last 2 years and this year and in the last few weeks of a lot of activity, a lot of strange activity, from black panthers to, I believe, I know there have been other cryptid reports, the spheres, many reports of these small spheres of light low to the ground as recent as last night. There's so much strange things going on. I can't even begin to tell you what's been going on. I'm just trying to look through my pages here and just try to find some things to tell you about. I'm going to tell you about one that's really interesting, if I can find this page here, of these recent cases. And this is, okay, let me go into October because I know that's where some of this is going to be. And it's not, again, just your some of these standardized reports, some of this stuff is getting even more bizarre. And I should be getting to this here pretty quickly. Open. Yeah, and again, I'm looking here for other sightings. And yes, there was another Bigfoot sighting reported. This would be up in Cambria County, early October this year. Two people on vehicles observed a Bigfoot, I believe 7 foot tall. Arms were down, had dark black matted hair. There was no smell. That's being looked into. That was just up in that area as well.
What's the general location in Cambria?
This was out, I believe, towards up towards the outside of Revlock.
Okay.
But now let me just give you an idea about just some of the weirdness that's being reported. And this was up in Cambria County. This is early October. There's been a history of things going on in this area, but what's interesting is other people are reporting and confirming some of these reports from this area as well. So anyhow, in this rural area, in the evening, there's a tree about 150 feet high, about 75 feet above the ground. Witness sees a pale orange mist appear. Looks like a large blob that came down to the ground. Suddenly, the mist turned into a white figure that was taller than a human and very slim. He could see a possible head but no arms or legs. Looked somewhat like some kind of a figure. Then 2 more smaller white figures also appeared. Behind him, a small white ball appeared to be about the size of a baseball. It went from window to window, and you could still see it. And after about 4 minutes, all the anomalies just vanished from sight. It's just strangeness. Very, very, very strange things going on.
Yeah, well, it's kind of par for the course. I mean, we've been hearing a lot of weird stuff. The investigators we've got here in Pennsylvania, and we've got several now. We've been hearing it all over the state. A lot of weird, just really weird, unexplained stuff. Jose asked a question: could these ball orbs be more of a spiritual realm than actual physical alien ships? I will say one thing. I believe a lot of it may actually be spiritual realms in connection with these cryptids. What are your thoughts on that, Stan?
Well, again, I definitely don't understand what's going on. I don't think anybody does. And again, some of these reports are not always just luminous objects, and they're not always spherical. Many times they are, but sometimes they are not. Sometimes there's other configurations being reported, and some of them appear to be solid metallic looking. But and again, when I talked about these reports of these spheres of light associated with some of the UFO sightings over the years, or Bigfoot and UFOs, once again, I'm stressing this. I am not suggesting these things are extraterrestrial from another planet.
Right.
All I know about what we're dealing with Bigfoot and some of the other cryptids and some of these other ongoing things we're dealing with, there's a physical and a non-physical aspect to it. For a lack of a better term, I'll call it interdimensional.
Right.
And, what it is, we just don't know or understand. I think we're dealing with something that's well beyond our present scientific understanding. A lot of it makes absolutely no sense at all. I mean, there's similarities, there's patterns to some of these things going on, but it is so beyond our comprehension right now to figure out what's going on and why we're seeing this increase in these close encounter reports with these small objects, even in daylight, coming very close to people. I mean, that's something that's just really amazing what's happening.
Yeah, I know. And like I said, all around the country, I'm getting more and more of these Bigfoot orb sightings that are closer to witnesses. Witnesses are seeing these creatures interact with them as well. It's strange. Mothman 46 asked, Stan, did you receive any pterodactyl-like sightings on the ridge? I mean, even that or Thunderbird. You've been hearing anything with winged lately on the ridge?
I have had some very, very good Thunderbird encounters on the ridge in past years.
Right.
I can't think of any up on the ridge recently. There was a very good sighting that Eric and I looked into, I believe it was April this year, outside of Delmont, Pennsylvania, where some people in a rural area had experienced something, and one witness got a really good look at this huge flying creature right over top of his head. I believe he estimated around a 15-foot wingspan. We've heard some other alleged reports in recent months, but we get those reports year after year. There was a number of very interesting cases last year in the area, and so these are going on too. But the Black Panther reports, we've had several of them this year already, and I found that interesting tie-in over the years with Bigfoot and UFOs, especially in some of those repeat areas where you have these ongoing things taking place. And back in, I believe, the summer of 1979, on the border of Westmoreland and Armstrong County, some very strange things began to happen in that area after an object fell from the sky one afternoon to a field, and the locals began to report screams and howls and Bigfoot activity. But it was 1981 and 82, I believe, when things really began to intensify in that area, when numerous people began to report UFOs and screams and paranormal phenomena, strange footprints, the spheres of light below the ground, the orbs, a Bigfoot activity, but at the same time, Black Panther activity going on. I mean, this was such a big deal back at that time that one of the big TV stations in Pittsburgh did a special report on it, and one of the big newspapers did a very serious story about it. And and as you recall, I've talked about these Black Panther reports for years and years in Pennsylvania. We're not talking about mountain lions or cougars or panthers, which, of course, we all know they're out there. They were in Pennsylvania for years and years. I mean, officially, they're extirpated, but people report seeing them year after year. But we're not talking about connecting that with Black Panthers. So when we're talking about the Black Panther reports, people are talking about seeing what they believe to be a black leopard or black jaguar, similar to what you would be seeing in other parts of the world, not around here. They've been seeing them for years and years.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And I had that one very bizarre case back in February, I believe it was 83, up in Fayette County. That was the case that convinced me, among some others I investigated, and I get into some of these in my recent book, that there's more to the Black Panther phenomenon as well. Now, I'll tell you the story because it's such an interesting one. So this is February of 83, it's a very cold morning. This guy's coming home around 1 o'clock in the morning. His car's overheating. Pulls into his driveway, opens the garage door, goes in and gets a can of antifreeze. Putting antifreeze in his vehicle, and a few minutes later, here's a loud growl. So he turns around about 20 feet away. Here's this large black cat sitting there growling at him, and he didn't think too much of it because he's out in the country and there's cats around. So he goes back to putting more antifreeze in the car, and a few minutes later, he hears an even louder growl, and he turns around to look, and this time he is very shaken because this large black house cat has now physically grown to twice its size. So he throws that empty can at it, and it growls at him fiercely, and it turns around and starts walking out up to the front, outside, up the road where it's well illuminated. He runs inside the garage and grabs his pistol. When he comes out a couple of minutes later, here's that big cat that has doubled its size, but now it's even bigger, and it looks just like a Black Panther. He said, like you see in a zoo. It has glowing yellow eyes, and it's staring at him, and it's growling at him, and he takes a shot at it. He wasn't sure if he hit it, but moments later, it just physically vanished and disappeared right in front of him.
I know for a fact that these Black Panther sightings, these big black cats, have been seen up on the ridge. Like I told you before, I was up at Linden Hall, up along the Monongahela, up along the Yacht, and that guy came running in off the golf course telling us that he saw a Black Panther out there. And I've had other reports up there as well. So I know for a fact people are seeing them.
Yeah, it's been going on for years and years. And, it's just like all these other reports with the Bigfoot, with the Thunderbirds, with the out-of-place animals like Black Panthers, all these other strange creature reports we're getting. Well, you've got so many credible people who see them who are reluctant to even tell you about it. You've got patterns to it, but you never find any bodies. And these things, again, they seem to come and they go. You know, with some of the Bigfoot reports I've had over the years, a lot of them look physically solid. But then I have people tell me that they're riding down the road and suddenly this huge hairy creature just suddenly appears out of nowhere. They see it from head to toe. They watch it walk and suddenly it's gone. And then in some cases, I have reports of these things where you got a partial physically solid body, but sometimes part of the body is kind of misty or foggy or out of focus. And then we had those weird reports back in the 70s where people were seeing this Bigfoot in daylight right there near them. Suddenly it physically vanishes and reappears a short distance away. I mean, it is so strange and it's so unusual. And you get more and more reports like this going on. And again, you know, we talked about this a long time ago, years ago, and now all over the country, you're getting similar reports. And, you know, we're talking about the cases with these small spheres being reported in the Bigfoot. Here was an interesting case. Mm-hmm. This was in May of 2019 in a rural area outside of Pittsburgh where in more recent years, various people reporting screams and howls and weird things from the same area now. So it's early morning. The guy was up, happened to look out his kitchen window, but his backyard is well illuminated. It goes near the woods. You can see everything well. Here's a smaller Bigfoot, 4.5 to 5 feet tall, dark hair, long hair on the head and the back area, walking upright, arms were extended almost down to the knees. And as he's watching this thing take a long stride, it enters a wooded area. About 3 seconds after it enters the woods in that exact location, a bright sphere of light about 3 to 4 inches in diameter suddenly appears. He said it was similar looking directly to the front of a flashlight, about 4 feet off the ground. The light then moves a short distance and vanishes. A few seconds later, the light reappears about 10 feet away, but this time the small sphere emits a bright beam of light that extends out to about 10 to 12 feet, and then suddenly a few seconds later, that beam disappears and the object's gone.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's pretty close to the kind of stuff we're hearing as well. I mean, geez. Let me ask you this. We have had a lot of strange reports coming out of Greene County. Have you heard anything down that way lately, other than UFOs?
You know, there's a researcher that I know pretty well named Kevin Paul. He's
Right.
looked at a number up in that area up in Greene County.
Right.
I know I talked to him, I think, yesterday or the day before, and he said he's getting apparently some increase in some paranormal type of activity, but not so much with UFOs or Bigfoot that I'm aware of. Now, I've heard some reports in the last few years of some activity up there, but again, the surrounding counties, you know, outside of there, you know, there's Cambria and Allegheny and Butler and a lot of these areas here in Southwest PA where we're getting reports.
Right.
But, you know, the whole point is this: even though we're not hearing it, very possible things are going on because I'm getting a lot of reports from people who've had these things go on for weeks and months, were reluctant to tell anybody, and none of these people made a report. So it's really hard to say how much of this is really going on.
Right. Have any of your witnesses more recently have felt threatened by any of the phenomena that they're experiencing?
Not really. I mean, with a lot of Bigfoot sightings, you know, for years, of the hundreds of cases I've investigated, includes many daylight sightings, many at very close range.
Right.
These objects always seem curious of human activity, but for them to go after somebody and physically hurt them, I just don't have those kind of reports. Now, yes, in some cases, they'll throw some pretty good-sized rocks, like small boulders or branches towards people as that to scare them away.
Yeah.
But that's about it. They just seem very curious of human activity.
Hmm. Yeah, it does seem that they're curious. And you know, honestly, and it seems mostly out in the western part of the state, we do get a lot of sightings of Bigfoot along the rivers for whatever reason. I know we've had several up on the Allegheny River, even pretty close to Pittsburgh. People seeing them out in the water or throwing stuff at people fishing in the river. It seems to be, I don't know how active it is now, but I know for a while, though, I got several reports. So I don't know. We also get that with the upright canines as well. Have you gotten any upright canine or dogman sightings lately?
I do hear of them on occasion. I do get these kind of reports, but Lon, the dogman reports are really not that new. If you go back to some of those cases, my Solid Invasion book, when we had that massive wave in '73, right. Many sightings of Bigfoot that were your so-called typical description of something 6 to 9 feet tall with a long, dark, matted hair and no neck, and sometimes with luminous eyes, but not in all cases. But there were some variations with some of those reports as well. Some were shorter and more muscular. Some were taller and thinner. And then I had some cases where people, literally were face to face with these creatures within feet. And some of those cases, they gave very detailed descriptions. And I'll give you one example because I remember this really well. This was, I believe, in August during '73. This was between Greensburg and Jeanette. This woman was visiting some friends out in the country where there had been a lot of Bigfoot sightings around there at the time. It was a very low foundation to the ground. It was early morning, around 3 o'clock in the morning, and the woman went to use the restroom. So she's sitting there, and directly in front of her, maybe a foot or two in front of her, is the window. I believe it was a screened-in window, and she began to hear these strange sounds outside, and suddenly this thing rises up, and it's looking from the other side of the window directly into her face. She gave a detailed description. This thing, the face was covered with hair, but she said it was a description of it more like a wolf or a dog. But it was luminous, glowing, orangish red eyes, fang-like teeth, a little more pointed ears. She was hysterical. They immediately called the state police. The state police connected her to me. I interviewed her soon after it happened, within minutes. Trooper went out there and found some possible tracks around the area. Now, here's the interesting part of this story, which you rarely ever hear, but I have more than one case for this. Mm-hmm. She was so scared that she asked her friends to take her to her home several miles away. Within the hour, the same or similar Bigfoot-type creature showed up at her property.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, that's not the only case. I've had other cases like that.
Yeah. Hey, Bernadette asked in the chat if what's the strangest case you have that's come from Laurel Mountain? Can you think of one?
Oh my gosh, there have been so many incidents around the woods and forests and along the highways up there off of Route 30. I've heard a lot. I'm involved in a case that happened just a few years ago, but I just got information on it from a witness, and I want to try to do some more backup before I tell you the story. It's a very, very strange incident. It's a cryptid incident, but there's a lot more to it. There might be a time lapse involved in it. But anyhow, that was up there. I've heard many, many accounts of Bigfoot sightings up in the Laurel Highlands. Lots of UFO cases around there. There are just so many reports that I couldn't begin to pick that one out. And again, so many interesting cases all along the Chestnut Ridge and other areas. But Fayette County, of course, just very, very intriguing. And of course, some of the strangest cases I've ever investigated happened up in Fayette County as well, especially during 1973 and 1974. But It's just ongoing. You never know what the next phone call is going to bring in.
Oh yeah. So, what do you think? What do you think is the whole nexus for why the Chestnut Ridge is so active? What is your theory on that?
Well, I've tried to find it out. We've looked into the geography of the area. We've looked into different aspects of it, and so far we just haven't been able to come up with anything. Yeah. The pattern I found years ago is that many low-level, close-range UFO sightings and many encounters with Bigfoot and other cryptids occur in the vicinity of high-energy sources, which is a lot of them along the ridge. So that would encompass high-tension power lines, power plants, gas wells, gas lines, bodies of water, railroad tracks. It goes on and on and on. Cell phone towers. I mean, this is, in more recent years, you're hearing more and more incidents. I mean, it's funny, Eric and I and myself and others are going out to investigate a lot of these incidents, and you're looking around, and sometimes we look up and there's high-tension power lines going right over top of where the incident occurred, or right near gas lines or gas wells. And you talked about bodies of water. I've had reports for years of Bigfoot and other cryptids near the water and in the water. And I've had reports of Bigfoot swimming under the water. And many sightings have occurred in recent years right along the riverbanks. And yes, I've had reports of people told me they were in kayaks or canoes or whatever, and these things were throwing huge, pretty good-sized boulders or rocks towards them in the water. So I've heard that for years.
Interesting. Yeah, it is weird. I mean, of course, I've been hearing about the Chestnut Ridge long before I even met you. And people in fact, I used to go hunting up there. So, I used to travel up there to go hunting. Heard people tell me all kinds of strange stories. It is. It's just one of those areas, how it is in Pennsylvania. It's weirder than Pennsylvania, actually. It's just all kinds of crazy stuff, hot areas. But the ridge does seem to be the most active area overall. Yeah,
and again, it is very active, especially the dairy side of the ridge. For whatever reason, year after year, this past Mother's Day afternoon, a woman was walking there, and an 8-foot-tall Bigfoot came out of the woods, probably 30, 40 feet away from her. She got a very good look at her. Her one dog just stopped, and just the hair was raised up on it, wouldn't move, wouldn't bark, and it just kept going, never looked at her. And, you and I have talked about this. I know we have, because I think this is a fascinating detail that I started noticing several years ago, and you and I think have agreed that you've heard this too. But in some case where people were physically close to Bigfoot or other cryptids, the witnesses commented that it seems as though when the creatures realized that the human observers could see them, there was a startled reaction, that they were shaken, they could be seen. And I think that is a very important little detail that might be giving us a clue.
No, I think it is too. I mean, I think for the most part, they may think they're some type of either cloaked or they're just we're just unable to see them for some reason. I hear that a lot. People saying that they see, when they're watching these things and they notice that a human is actually watching them, they do give that reaction like, why are they looking this way? Why are they looking at me? Can they see me? It startles them, like you said. Absolutely. Yeah, you and I have talked about that. It's bizarre.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And there are so many elements that a Bigfoot anomaly. Last several years, and I've been given a lecture called Strange Aspects of Elusive Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. And I get to a lot of these things that very few people have ever heard about with Bigfoot. And the one case that really stands out for me, and this is something in Pennsylvania, the case I worked on, of the hundreds of people I've interviewed, they rarely ever talk about it. Probably they have a handful of cases. But, you hear about this in other parts of the country of people who claim that they've had some type of telepathic communication with the creature.
Yeah.
And the one incident I do recall well, because I was there, so I can vouch for this one, even though I've never seen a UFO or Bigfoot myself. But in this case, this was back in the 80s along the Chestnut Ridge in the Westmoreland County side. I remember some of these local people had called me to come out because this huge hairy creature was coming down from the top of the ridge, down below it, near some of these people's properties, and their animals were getting shaken, and they wanted to be interviewed and investigated. And I remember going out with a couple of my team members. There was a small group of people there, and one of the people in the group relayed reluctantly said that it seemed as though this creature was trying to communicate with them. While we were there, this person says, this Bigfoot is telling me that tomorrow morning, the next morning, up in Indiana County, so it's about 15 miles away in another county, but up in the Ridge area, that there will be a UFO incident tomorrow morning. And guess what? Early the next morning, multiple reports of this strange sound of something right over top of Homer City. I believe it was Homer City. And anyhow, it was so unusual, they called the fire department out. That was actually in the newspaper.
Wow. That is interesting.
Yep.
So, Stan, how can folks get a hold of you, and how they can get a hold of your books, and what do you have coming up?
Well, I'm just finishing up some of my lectures for the year, and a lot of things are being booked already for next year. So again, a lot of reports. My hotline's been open since 1969. They can reach me by phone at 724-838-7768. My website is stangordon.info, info. Contact information on there. The best email is paufo@comcast.net. My new book is Creepy Cryptids and Strange UFO Encounters of Pennsylvania, and it goes deep into a lot of the weird things up there on the Chestnut Ridge and Laurel Ridge. All my books are on Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com, and so people can actually talk to me.
Well, Stan, once again, thanks for coming on with us. We always love having you come on, and I will be talking to you quite soon.
All right, Lionel, it was good talking to you again, and have a good evening.
You take care. Now, if you have had a sighting or encounter report that you would like to be considered for the personal report show, or even posted on phantomsofmonsters.com, please feel free to contact me at lonstrickler@phantomsofmonsters.com. I want to again thank Stan for coming on. Always great to have Stan on here. And thanks to anybody who's made any donations on the super chats or super thanks or whatever is up there. It's really appreciated. We need your support, and we do appreciate your support. Now this Friday night, we have Dogman experiencer Matt Huriak and Phantoms of Monsters 14 research investigators Timothy Renner and Chad Redding joining me to discuss Matt's encounter in Berks County, Pennsylvania. This was, I'll be honest, this is probably the strangest cryptid canine sighting that I have ever had reported to me, especially here in Pennsylvania. Probably the strangest anywhere. So you'll definitely want to tune in for that. And if you have questions for Matt or any of us, please feel free to do that. Join us in the chat. Now, I do want to mention next week, I am not going to be doing any shows. I'm going to be indisposed of having surgery on the Thursday. But on Friday night, the 28th, Vincent and Bernadette are going to be doing a Halloween show. So we will get that posted up, and you will be informed when to tune in. And again, I appreciate everybody getting back to me as far as supporting me for what I'm going through and my surgery and everything else. It's much appreciated. So until then, until Friday, stay healthy and have a safe, enjoyable weekend. Good night.